Okay, so today I've got Thomas O'Malley. Now, Thomas is an agent that is on my team and also part of Century 21, Harrelson Group family. And Thomas is an anomaly out there. This is a super aggressive, go-getter type guy that has been working with me for about a year and a half now, has done big things. And so I just want to kind of have him give you some thoughts on exactly what his experience has been as he's gone from brand new licensee to where he is now. So Thomas, thanks for getting on. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, for sure. So everybody that's listening to this now who may not know you, kind of bring us up to speed on how did you get into the business, how long you've been in, and kind of what's your transaction or your productivity history.
Yeah, so I got into the business right when I was 18. I went to college at 17, realized really quickly it was not for me. I kind of got out of that scene, got into real estate in my first full year. So I got in midway through 2017-ish.
Okay.
Kind of finished that year out, was going through the transition. And then 2018 was my first full year. I finished with, I think it was 19 or 20 deals. And the rest has just kind of been history.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, so you started mid-year through 2017, and
Yeah.
then that's kind of that ramp up period where you were getting to know just what the heck you were supposed to be doing. Now, I think it's important. I want to give just a little bit more background on when I was introduced to you. Your mom works for one of our companies, and
She
so
does.
when I was introduced to you and I met with you, just give me or give the audience a little bit of background on. You had a little bit of sales experience, not conventional sales experience, but what were you doing in high school? Like, you've got kind of the entrepreneur bug for sure. So what were you doing in high school to
Yeah.
like make extra cash?
So what I would do is I would just like do whatever I could to scrounge up some sort of money, whether it's like I would sweep floors at a deli, and then whatever money I could get, I would on Saturday mornings, Jordans would release, and my dad would bring me to go to these new Jordan releases, and we'd scoop them up because they were limited, and then we'd be able to resell them and flip them and make profit on them.
Okay, now you're gonna have to explain a little bit more. I know what they are. I probably would have because I was in that area of when Michael Jordan was really, really cool. What are Jordans? What were you flipping?
So yeah, it's just sneakers. It's just collectible sneakers that people wear on their feet. They're like basketball or tennis sneakers, and it's kind of crazy. It's not many people would think there's a market for it, but it's crazy. The amount of money people pay for these shoes is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, so you basically were like, I got to make some extra cash, but the extra cash wasn't to go, whatever 17, 18-year-olds are doing with their cash. Your extra cash was actually, I got to generate some cash, so I had some working capital to go buy some inventory and then flip the inventory, which just happened to be sneakers.
Yeah, and it just grew. I mean, this started at like 13. Like I was sweeping floors at 13 and then buying shoes off of eBay or buying shoes off my friend's feet at school. Like it didn't matter.
Yeah,
Like whatever
got
there
it.
was opportunity, I would just go scoop it up.
Got it. So that was kind of the beginning taste of like, I'm not going to probably do the conventional job route. You spent some time in college, said, boy, this isn't this. I don't feel comfortable here. A huge kudos to your parents, who I know both very well, and they said, all right, we're going to let you follow what your path is, which is entrepreneur, be a sales guy, and go out there and get into something that you can hustle at. So fast forward, you get into 2017, halfway through the year. What do you think now, looking back, what are some of the challenges that you had? You get into real estate, you're just out of high school, in college. What were some of the challenges that you were dealing with?
Man, it was a lot of challenges, honestly. It was just like you're thrown from one world into a completely new one. I have no professional experience at all. I mean, most professional thing I did was wait tables. So
Hmm.
I mean, you go from not even being able to help people at all on that level of being a professional and being able to truly serve people, just learning how to do that, and then learning the art of the sale and learning how to have a conversation with people and hold a conversation, and then you add this whole real estate side of it, like
Hmm.
all that on top of all of it. It was a lot to digest at first, and it was definitely required a lot of help and guidance along the way
Okay.
to try to
So
digest it.
Okay. So what I'm hearing you say is, and we've had a lot of conversations about this, what I'm hearing you say is what we know after being in business a while is this business, this industry, real estate and sales, has its own language.
Oh
So
yeah.
even though, when you started in the business, you didn't know the real estate language. You have a pretty good handle on it now. So that's a challenge for everybody. Even if I came from a completely different profession in a corporate world. I was in my mid 30s. You weren't even 20 yet. So we were in two different spots, but we both had something in common. We had to learn the language of real estate in order to be effective. So how did you do that? How did you set about doing that?
Practice, and just a lot of practice, and not being scared to fail. That is like the biggest one, because you can practice and practice until you can get going, and then you'll role play and you'll learn the scripts, and you'll do all that, and then you go out and you make calls, and then you get rejected, and people say no, and then they curse at you, and it seems all like this big intimidating thing, and then once you overcome that fear of that rejection, then you actually like are in these live scenarios, which is like it's the best sort of role play that there could ever be, is just being on a prospecting call and getting yelled at.
Yeah. So you figured out that, you weren't really going into it thinking, okay, I'm either going to be good or not good at this based on the results I get. You just were like doing what you were told.
Yes, I almost wanted to prove you guys wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So prove us wrong. How?
Because I mean, I walk into the training center, and it's like this call center environment, and I'm this arrogant 18-year-old kid. Like, I'm just like, what the hell did my mom just get into? She just started with this company 6 months ago. Where the hell did she go? And then I meet with Greg, and I realized, I was like, holy cow, this is like a whole different world. Like, this is just crazy. So just I completely lost my train of thought, but that just, I had no clue, like, really what telemarketing was, or a prospecting call, or asking people for business was, until I saw how you guys did it. And it was just mind opening.
Good. So you got through the first half of the year and overcame some of the skill sets that you need. So you spent a lot of time. I know you spent a ton of time, and we're very committed not only to the live role plays, which actually making outbound calls and getting into conversations with sellers so you could learn the market and learn the conversation, but you spent a ton of time role playing. Besides the calls and besides role playing, what do you think helped you overcome or actually break through the barrier of, like, a guy that comes in and says he wants to do a lot of stuff, and now a guy that actually is doing stuff?
I think it was mainly, like you said, I did do a ton of like script practice. Like I would handwrite all my scripts every single day for an hour, and not just like handwrite it like, oh, Mike Ferry just listed, like write all that, but I would say, okay, I was stumped 20 times this morning. I didn't set one appointment. I talked to 20 people, and I was stumped, and I'd write like how they stumped me on the phone down, or just keep it in my head. And then in that hour, I'd think of, okay, so they said, Thomas, I mean, you sound like you know what you're talking about, but we're just not looking at hiring a realtor right now. And then I'd use that objection for like a sale by owner conversation. I'd write out 5 different objection handlers, and just really try to learn the patterns and just learn the language that way. Just like really spelling it out for myself.
Yeah. So you tried to, it sounds like you spent time just not letting an objection be an objection and nothing learned from it. So you'd actually go and figure out, okay, at the end of the day, because there were a lot of days where you didn't, if somebody was judging themselves based on the results, you probably were like, man, I didn't have any, so I'm not any good. And instead of taking that approach to it, you said, okay, I know it's going to be a process, and I had these things that stumped me. Now let's go learn from them, so I only get stumped once.
Right.
Okay.
And from early on, you told me that there's only X amount of conversations that you need to learn. So every no, I didn't look at it like, oh my God, there's this big pile of no's. It looked like it was like a ice block that I was just chipping away at slowly. Each no that I learned from, was just chipping away until that thing got smaller and smaller.
Yeah, that's a huge piece, I think, is that there is, I mean, we're in 2019 dealing with the same conversations and a lot of the same objections and questions and everything that people that were in the business 40 years ago were dealing with. And so the quicker one of the approaches I took is the quicker I can get through the conversations and get like every blocker, every objection, everything that I didn't know thrown at me, then the sooner I'd be able to ask somebody about it and then get better at it. So I wanted to get in those conversations that I didn't know, because I didn't want them showing up down the road. The quicker we can get through them, then the more effective we're going to be. So now, what are some of the, because we all look back and say, all right, here's where I'm at, and I feel good where I'm at. But looking back, what are some of the aha moments, or what's one of the things that you look back on and say, I wish I would have done this a little bit sooner, or maybe, boy, I shouldn't have spent as much time messing around with this?
I think it was mainly in the beginning. I got into a quick pattern of like a contactitis,
Mm-hmm.
and like I would be going through and making these calls and getting told no a lot, but wasn't really getting the most out of each conversation that I possibly could have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish early on I just nipped that in the butt, and instead of having to learn something like you said just before only one time, had to learn it 3 or 4 times, and then not take advantage early on of all the effort I was putting out. Just working hard, not smart.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that one of the places that shows up is because we do. I mean, I just said you have to get through a lot of conversations to learn the business, to learn the language. But in that, we have a tendency sometimes to get contactitis and really just be like, all right, I've got to get through these conversations, and we lose sight of the goal is actually trying to set an appointment. So if we're super concerned with just making contacts and just getting through the conversation, then we're going to have a hard time listening. And listening is where you find motivation, and motivation is where you set appointments. So it's a balance. And as you get more skills, your contacts naturally start to decrease because your conversations are better and you're hearing more. So you're starting to listen more. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up. Okay, so to kind of wrap up here, put yourself back 18, 20 months ago. You're a new agent either coming to the company, or a new agent, new licensee that is just starting in the business. What advice do you have for them?
Don't be scared to fail.
Okay.
Failing is not a bad thing, and you got to change your definition of what you think failing is. When you fail in real estate, it equals paychecks down the line. The more you fail now, the better you get, and the better you get, the more business you get. And then obviously you get paid more. So
Yeah.
it's ultimately just, you can't be scared to fall on your face, because the sooner you fall, the sooner you'll be up and running.
Man, that's great. And I would go out on a limb and say, everybody's going to be a little bit concerned, a little bit afraid to fail, but if you can't overcome that in this business, you're probably really going to fail in the business, meaning you're not ever going to get, you're probably going to wash out of the business. The people that are really good in this business failed the most.
Mm-hmm. And it could be scary at first. I mean, when I first started, it was terrifying to fail. So don't if you think it's like the scariest thing right now, it doesn't mean that it won't be in 18 months. So just don't be scared of it. It's something that definitely everyone can conquer.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thank you again for getting on, and a lot of good nuggets here for everybody that's listening.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet.